Now, I'm really kind of jealous that you are interviewing our guest today, because
I
obviously
know.
you do the interviews, so you should. You are the face with an amazing haircut. But it is Speech from Arrested Development. Now, when I was revisiting all the kind of stuff about him, he's fascinating, super
Yeah.
intelligent, super
Yeah.
smart, and when you go back and read all the stuff, we interviewed him. It was actually for MTV
Right.
Dance
I remember that.
in 1994. Yeah, do you remember? Now, this is it. Do you actually, was it at the Jazz Cafe? Because they were doing a gig. Hip Hop Connection mentions them doing something at the Jazz Cafe. I can't actually remember where we did that.
The funny
but,
thing
yeah.
is, I can see the location in my mind, but I don't know. Cool. I don't know where it was. I can see the location. It was quite dark, and I remember the girls were teaching me African dancing. I remember sitting with Baba OJ, and just
Sadly passed away.
I know, such a special man, and just that whole experience of being with Arrested Development was really special. So I'm very excited to be talking to Speech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of things that I think you should ask. The race comes out and the politics in a lot of these amazing press. I think one thing that's very interesting is the lawsuit that they had with the TV show of the same name, Arrested Development. Because when I was revisiting them, and you type Arrested Development into Google, or other search engines are available, you get basically the TV
Right.
show. And that is unfair and a bit unreasonable, particularly because the music group, Arrested Development, trademarked Arrested Development. So it wasn't just like they made up these two words, they trademarked it. So I'd like to know a little bit more. I mean, technically Speech could have stopped that TV show using that name. He
Wow.
didn't. They did settle out of court. But why did, interesting why he maybe didn't get them to change the name? Because you imagine how infuriating it is. You build up your sort of your brand, your
Right.
persona, and people know you for all that stuff, and then boom, confusion with the name. So that's interesting. Arrested Development is a great feature here, Trouble in Paradise, about, they've done so well, all these Grammys, all these millions of sales, and it really talks about the pressure they're under.
Right.
And the connection to Prince. Another interesting thing, remember their single Tennessee?
Right.
Like the big single.
Yes.
They sample one word from Prince. They didn't get permission to do it. They sample that one word which came from Alphabet Street. And Prince sues them, but in a really kind of nice way. He's like, look, just give me like $100,000. Don't want a songwriting credit. And Speeches talks a lot about how Prince was such a big influence on him. I'd be interested in you asking him.
Yeah.
Obviously, since then, Prince has passed away.
I know.
Baba OJ's passed
Yeah.
away. You know how he feels with their passings,
Yeah.
right? So amazing press they had back in the day. I mean, this is like tip of the iceberg stuff. Remember her?
Yes, I remember that picture.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, wasn't that the
What a
cover of?
Yeah, the album cover.
Oh, that's why. That's why I remember it.
Yeah. Southern fried funk.
And again, I just love how you obviously have remembered that they were in these magazines, and you've been pulling
Can I tell you, I
these
nearly
mags.
fell off all these shelves. Yeah, I was pulling some of these shelves very, very hard. I might not have been here. I just want all the people watching and listening to this to know that it's not just a kind of, you don't just suddenly, have a robot who gets this stuff for you. It's physically pulled from high mag, and it can be precarious and dangerous, and you can have an accident at the workplace.
Oh my goodness.
He says as he's trying to find
Oh my
another nice
goodness.
picture of
So we
Arrested
need to have
Development.
video of you doing this, of you clambering
Okay.
on top of.
What, of me breaking my back?
No, not that
and then
bit.
being
Of
paralysed?
finding these
Okay.
gems, these magazines.
This is lovely, Echo Esham's piece, when they were like, this was in the face, they were Band of the Year.
Nice.
Look at that. R.I.P. as well, Luke Perry. Sadly, no more.
Band of the Year. Nice.
From the Face magazine, that's quite an accolade.
Such a great band. Oh, I just love them. I really do. They're still releasing really great music, by the way. They have a
Absolutely,
fantastic
absolutely.
album out at the moment, and single. And Baba OJ. Yeah, I really want to hear Speech talk about him, because I know that he was
mm.
such an important part of the band. So yeah,
Another thing as well, actually, is kind of good. They were kind of a precursor to Black Eyed Peas, right?
totally.
And they were
Yeah,
such a welcome
yeah,
change from the gangster rap that was around at the
yeah,
time. Not that the gangster rap was a bad thing.
yeah,
I mean, it was a style, but
yeah.
they had incredible lyrical conscience. One of the best things, I have to say, one of the best, and I remember this from the time. This was from, I think, April 1994. I think we had just interviewed them. They were everywhere. They were, remember they did the MTV Unplugged.
Oh,
First
nice.
rap group, I think, to win a Grammy. I can't remember in the category. It was like some new category. But the quote that I love from Billboard, he speaks every time he talks about sampling, because on the album they had all these, I don't know if you remember these American chants and all these beats. And the speech was going every time. This is so good. I love this. I remember this from the time. Every time you sample notes, you're also sampling the spirit of whomever you're sampling. So, if he sampled, I think he mentions like a Herbie Hancock loop. He says, I'm sampling the emotions he was experiencing when he was playing. Wow. I love that.
That's
the
deep,
real,
isn't it?
it is
It's
deep.
deep. I like
and it
that.
hit me. So I think we told Bill Laswell about that when we finally tracked down an interview with Bill Laswell in Brooklyn. When you sample, you are taking that energy, the soul of whoever played on that record.
Wow.
Select magazine.
What is this? What does the headline say? Soil.
Soil Family Sensation, a play on the words on that other soul group at the time called Soul Family Sensation. Who would have thought a year ago that the world would be at the bare feet of an agriculturally correct, urbanly challenged, non-aggressive, non-ageist, brown rice rap octet from America's deep south.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. All right.
Today on the show, I've got a man here named Todd Thomas, better known to everyone, of course, as Speech. Speech from Arrested Development. Thank you so much for, coming on the show with me. I'm so, so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm
Really,
really
really
happy
great.
to talk to you. It's really a pleasure. Yeah.
It's been a long time. So James Hyman and I were trying to figure out when we last met, and we think it might have been in 1994 at the Jazz Cafe. We did a show called MTV Dance,
Uh-huh.
and the thing I remember was just the warmth that I felt from the
Wow.
band, from Arrested Development, from all of you. It really stayed with me for the rest of my life. The girls were
Wow.
teaching me African dancing. I
Come
still
on.
know the
Come on. I
moves.
love that. I love it. I
Serious.
love it.
Yeah.
I do. That's
and
fantastic.
and I remember talking to Baba OJ. That had such an
Wow.
impact on me. I mean, what a man.
Yeah.
Talk to me about
Yeah.
Baba OJ.
Bob OJ,
Talk to me what he meant to you.
Bob OJ meant a number of things to me. First of all, he was the most experienced man as far as traveling throughout Africa that I knew at the time. He okay, so Bob OJ is a pretty big study here. So Baba
Okay.
was the type of guy that loved to hang with younger people. He was 57 when I met him. He was hanging with people who were, 18, 19. So that was cool because he would teach us things. He was willing to talk to us. He didn't sort of play us off as nothing, and he respected us. And so I love that about him. Um, I didn't know it, but Baba was actually at my mother and father's wedding as the best man. So I had no clue. This was totally like me meeting him separately. We started talking. I wanted him to be in my rap group. And later, he found out that I was Todd Thomas and he said, "Oh, that's Pat and Robert's son." And so at first, he told me, "No, I don't want to be in this rap group." Then he found out I was their son and he was like, "You know what? I'll do it. I don't want to discourage this young little Thomas kid." I was in his mom and dad's wedding. And I learned all this stuff later. So I didn't know any of that about Bob OJ. Anyway, he's just the most um, serving guy. Bob OJ would often go out into the streets and feed the homeless. Baba OJ would um, spend, if he went to your house to just hang with you, he might be the type to live at your house from that initial meeting for 5 years. That's exactly what he did when he came to Africa with my mom and dad. Back when I was only 2 years old, they all went to Kenya to visit some family, and it wasn't his family, but my mom and dad came back to America 2 weeks later. He stayed for 5 years. He started traveling throughout Africa. He lived on the couch of my family members, but he's done that throughout his life. So like Baba is a he's
Wow.
almost like a modern day hobo before he passed away, and just a man of many wisdoms, African wisdom, street wisdom, life
Mm,
wisdom.
yes.
Served in the war. He was a military man. He was a banker. So he's just this wide wealth of knowledge and experience.
So do you still, like when you're performing, do you still kind of feel his presence, especially when you perform in certain songs?
Definitely, yeah, I
Do you
do.
still like have that feeling sometimes or that memory?
I do, and often, not just me and the group members often feel Baba's presence with us. And especially when we do People Every
Yeah.
Day, there's this section, Go Baba, go
Hmm.
Baba, go Baba. We often think of him. And the day that Baba
Oh.
died was the day after my birthday, and I want to say 2018. I'm forgetting the exact year now. We were in Europe, we were in Paris,
Mm.
France. I found out that he had passed away right before a show, and my birthday was the day before. And the beautiful thing about Baba is I was with him about 2 weeks earlier because he was sick, and I happened to be in Milwaukee. I went to go visit him at the hospital, me and my queen, my wife. And so we got a chance to say our goodbyes and talk to him about 2 weeks earlier, but he lasted about 2 weeks, passed the day after my birthday. And that night we were in Paris, France. We did a show dedicated to him. We had a huge, beautiful slide presentation with his face and artwork and things that he's done on the screen, and it was just one of the most special nights of our career. And so yeah, we often think it often.
Yeah. You know what really So when I spoke to Baba OJ, I actually asked him, in hindsight, I now realize, a very rude question, and it was just pure ignorance on my behalf. I was this little, young white Dutch girl, from the Netherlands. I did not really understand racism the way you guys
Uh-huh.
did. And I asked him, I'm like, why are you guys always going on about being black? Why is that such a big issue? Now, at the time, he could have chosen to be offended. He could have talked
Yeah.
down to me like, "Oh, you stupid little girl," but he didn't. He very calmly spoke to me, and it really, it changed my perception completely, because he explained to me that with American history, even to this day,
Yeah.
slavery only ended at this moment less than 160 years ago. And then
Facts.
after that, there was still the Jim Crow law
The
that
Trim
went on
Crow
for another
era.
100 years. A whole lot of segregation,
Hmm.
where white and black people would have different bathrooms, different drinking fountains, sit in different
Yes.
parts of the bus. And even though I'd heard about that, and I heard about, Rosa Parks and stuff, when I spoke to Baba Ojo, it really touched me, because I think as well he told me that it was either his grandparents or his great grandparents who still had known slavery, right, or had been
Yes.
slaves.
His
And that was
grandparents.
like,
Hmm.
that was insane, that to me at that moment,
Yes.
to talk to a living person whose
Yes.
grandparents had been slaves. And that's when it struck me. I'm like, this is not ancient history. This
No,
is like,
not at
this is
all.
quite recent.
Recent history. It is.
Yeah.
And if you could
Wow.
imagine the trauma, so like if you, and I hate to use this as an example, but if you imagine a woman who was raped as a child, and
Mm-hmm.
what kind of trauma that presents to that woman for the rest of her life, even if she's able to move forward and able to
Right.
do wonderful things in her life, that trauma never leaves. Now, that's just a woman that's, let's say
Right.
she passes away at 80 years old, and let's say she was assaulted, when in her 20s. That's 60 years. But Black people's realities of slavery was hundreds of years. So this trauma was passed down generation to generation of those that never did see freedom, and even those that finally did see freedom from slavery. That trauma was still so baked in to our realities as a
Mm.
Black race of people in America that yeah, it's tough to define a world without seeing it through that lens for us, because so much of our realities were based on being black and having racism shown to us because of it.
Yeah. And it is, and in a way, that is how the past kind of lives on, right? It kind of continues because also parents, whatever traumas they have, they pass it to their children, who pass it to their children, who pass it to their children. And so it becomes also like this cycle that, of course, you guys to a large extent have also been wanting to break a lot of the cycles that were in place.
Yes.
How do you feel
Yes.
actually now looking back on it? I mean, you guys have achieved so much. We'll go into everything that you've achieved
Sure.
throughout the interview, but how do you feel just from that point of view? Do you feel like you've managed to get your point across, and do you think it's made a difference even just on a personal level for certain people?
Yes and yes. When I speak of trauma, the
Yeah.
trauma happens on all sides of the fence. So, in other words, it's trauma to Black people
Yes. Yeah.
who were the victims of slavery and oppression, but it's also trauma to white people who knew that this life that was being perpetuated was unnatural. It was evil. They saw
Yeah.
evils. Some of them participated in evils. And so these things are traumas for all people involved and the nation as well, just as a
Mm-hmm.
collective and spiritual whole, just as a country.
Yeah.
And so, yes,
Yeah.
I think the music has had a great impact on whites, blacks, Latins, Asians, people who have heard it. And has it changed everything? Like some people will say, well, things are
No.
still the same, or even some will say, well, things are even worse. But that's not the point of change. When you try to make a change, you're making the change for the people around you and the people that you can impact. What happens in the future, none of us have control
Right.
over. So I do know that the music
Yeah.
is and has made a big difference in millions and millions and millions of people's lives. So it's
Yeah.
something that we're proud of. And we continue to
Yeah.
make music to this day. So we even still continue that mission.
You make incredible music. I love,
Oh,
oh my
thank you.
goodness, I love the albums. Oh, so
Oh,
last
thank
year
you.
you actually released two albums. You released your own
Yes.
album, which
Yes.
was at the
Solo
beginning
record.
of the year, right? So that was Expansions. Yeah, that
Yes.
was on the name Speech, and then of course with Arrested Development, you
Yes.
brought out at the end of 2021 for the FKN for the F in love. I love how you put the F in front of that. It just makes it stronger, right? Bang!
Exactly right. Exactly right. I love that too. That's exactly why we did it.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It
it's a
is.
beautiful album. I
Thank
I
you.
I love how you've got little stories, little bits of spoken word kind of in between the tracks too, which is something you did
Yeah.
way back when, and
Yeah.
you're doing it
Very true.
now. And it seems that
Yeah.
more artists are starting to do that again now in albums, right?
Yeah.
To encourage
Yeah.
people
I've
to
noticed
listen to the
that.
whole album.
Exactly. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
For me, I come from a generation where the album was important. So this generation, I don't know if the album is as important
yeah,
to younger people, but with streaming, they're able to listen to a single here, make a playlist of their own, and it has nothing to do with necessarily the album of the artist. But for me, I come from a generation where the album was supposed to be a full experience, and it's supposed to take you on a
hmm
ride from the start of the roller coaster ride, going up that hill, chink, 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 chink. Then you go down that hill, and then you go all through the loops, and then you come back to that home base, and chink, 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 just that slow,
yeah,
stop. And that's what this album is supposed to be, and that's how I approach this all the time.
yeah, and that's what it is. And it's your 15th album with Arrested Development, right? Is that right?
I have no
Did I
idea.
count that
I,
right?
I've lost count. I don't even
You've
count
done,
anymore. Yeah, I don't
wow.
count.
You've done,
Yeah,
and the thing I find so funny. So your first album was 3 years, 5 months, and 2 days in the life off, and that was how long it
yeah,
took you guys to get the record deal, right? So
that's
isn't it
right.
funny how you went from that, and that was 30 years. That's 30 years ago. How
This
you
year,
went
it's
from
30
that
years.
to then in 20 yeah, and then in 2021 you actually there was a track that you did on Expansions called A Different World, right, which you wrote
Yeah,
after the insurrection of January the 6th, and that
yep,
track you released in like the space of a week. So to go from 30 years ago
yeah,
where it took you
yeah. Three and a
years
half
to be
years.
able to
Yeah,
release an
yeah,
album
yeah.
to then
A
1 week,
week. Yeah.
how crazy.
It's
S-
absolutely
so tell
insane.
me about
It's
this. So
insane.
how has this been?
Surreal.
So
And
it so
oh yeah, it's just surreal to be able to use technology in that way. Like we didn't have that opportunity 30 years ago. So there was no way we were going to be able to release a record, not only in a week, in months. And so there was no way we could do a
yeah.
press story like we're doing now. Like that would even take weeks or months to get a press story out. So there was a lot more preparation for things. But with January 6th and my album Expansion, the album was finished. And when that insurrection happened,
Mm,
I wrote that song the night of the insurrection. I literally was bubbling with emotion, anger, fear,
mm.
um, confusion, just a lot of different emotions. And that record to me had to express all of that. And so, yeah, yeah, it was very, very amazing to be able to put that out the week of it.
Wow. So that must mean that you have a lot more control over everything that you do these days, right? So do you
I
like it?
do.
How has that been for you? The whole change of technology and that everything's kind of now in your own hands. You enjoy that?
I do. It's a double edged sword, though. I have to be honest about
Mm-hmm.
how part of it I love. Like, you're right. I was able to release it in a week. But without that machinery, things are harder. I'm doing things independently. I'm up really
Mm-hmm.
late nights trying to work social media and expose a record. I'm having to hire various people to help me do things that normally the record label would have done for me. I'm having to, so
Yeah.
there's pros and cons to it. At the end of the day, I have learned to really respect it though. And I'll tell you the main reason why
Yeah.
is when we were on a major label, the problem with that was there was a machinery that the label possessed that could push the record to places that we never could get it. But when that machinery pulled
Mm-hmm.
out and when we got dropped from the label, we no longer knew how to reach our fan base. And that was hard because we had
Right.
music that we wanted to
Mm.
release, but we didn't have the knowledge base nor the machinery and the systems in place to tell all of our fans, which we had over 4 million hardcore fans that bought the album. How do we tell them that I have a new solo album out? Or how do I tell them that I have,
Right.
this For the F and Love out? It was so that's been a learning curve.
I've got a few quotes actually that James took from different magazines that you've been in, different
Wow.
magazine articles from way back when. So he's taken little
Okay.
quotes. He's gonna read them out, and I would like to get your take on this. So first this.
Okay.
This is Vibe, August 1994. In 1992, it was real easy to be over Arrested Development. Tennessee was chosen Best Rap Video of the Year by MTV. The band won 2 Grammys, including the first Best New Artist Award ever to go to a hip hop group. They won a Soul Train Music Award. They made every top 10 albums list known to mankind. They toured it on Vogue, did Lollapalooza, did an Unplugged. They were still beautiful, but they were also inescapable. Rolling
Oh,
Stone.
so so that whole thing basically from 1992, things blew up so much. You guys became
Yeah.
so big. How did you experience that? Like what was that like? What was that whirlwind? Well, I assume it was a whirlwind. What was it like for you?
Well, it was an absolute whirlwind. It was very it was almost as if you were time traveling or um going to another planet. Like everything was so different than what it was prior to the record coming out. So like we're poor, we're very communal in the way we approached our music. We didn't talk a lot about business because we weren't making any money anyway. And we were very political oriented and trying to get a message out and not really in the midst of a music industry. So Atlanta had not blew up for hip hop yet. And so then a short time after, all of those things have changed. We're immersed into not just business, but big business. We're making a lot of money. We're
Hmm.
traveling the planet where we've never traveled before. We're meeting industry people constantly. We're winning awards constantly. We're getting on charts all at the same time. All of this is new to us. And we're only 21, 22. The youngest member was probably 16, 17.
Wow.
So that's Ishi,
Wow.
our dancer. So, you know, all of that happening simultaneously, it was like time travel. It just felt weird. It was just like one day is one thing, the next day is another, and it's like, wow, how to,
Hmm.
put it into context, how to navigate this was a huge, huge, huge challenge. And as far as what that quote said, I mean, there was a big backlash because all of this happened so quick, and you know, we weren't escapable at the time. We were everywhere, seemingly. It's funny
Mm-hmm.
because, like, if you were to look at that nowadays, we weren't hardly anywhere compared to what people could do now. Like, you know, a record nowadays could be all over the internet within 1 hour of its release. I mean, so it's interesting, but yeah,
Yeah, but having said that, yes, all over the internet, but you don't get the how do I say it? Everything's like everyone's in their own little pockets, right? And you
that's
just go
true.
online and you
Very
find
true.
exactly what you like. Whereas back then, the whole
Yes,
world, everybody was looking at the same few acts that had been almost handpicked by the labels,
true.
and they were massive. And you guys just were part of that, rightly so, because I mean, your music was amazing, and it still is. But like he was saying, so things have very very much changed, and things are a lot more, you're dealing with your fans much more directly. But
Yeah,
how is it hard for a band like yours, for instance, to survive financially like that way, where things are a lot more, everything's digitized, it's all just, people
yeah.
stream their music. um, there's not the big bucks anymore
Extremely
like there
hard.
was before, right?
Not even
Right.
close. It's extremely hard. It's sometimes non-existent. So, our album is called For the Effin' Love. We did it really
Hmm.
for that. Like, we don't make money from music
Right.
anymore. None of these albums make any money. We spend
Wow.
more money on promotion than they do sales. And so, we make money on touring, but even that, I mean, it's with COVID being with us for the two
Yeah.
years now, we we used to tour at least 60, 70 dates a year. During COVID, we probably did four a year.
Huh.
So,
Wow.
that's a sizable
Wow.
decline. And, so it's totally different. And so it definitely forces you to reassess why do you do what you do. Like, do I do it for
Right.
the money or do I do it for something deeper in the love of it? And this album is definitely a testimony to the love.
Oh, I love that. Ah. I mean, not, I wish you
Yeah.
were making tons of money, but the
No, I
idea that
get
you
you. I
literally
get
are
you.
doing it for the love. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. And it's actually a lot harder now for the next generation coming through. I mean, for you guys,
Very
your
much
your
so.
old songs are still being played on the radio, right? You still got the
Yeah.
publishing and all these things from way back when. But
True.
how is this? And I think there's actually a track on your album, right? What's it called? I Want You to Make It. Is that a track specifically for this next generation? Is that kind of what you're talking about in that song?
I am. It's me and special guest King Crooked from Slaughterhouse fame. And well, I don't know what his verse is about, but I could tell just by being a fan of that verse that his is about any rhymer really trying to make it in this atmosphere today, right? As an independent artist and trying to
Mm-hmm.
get to that Eminem level or that, Jay-Z level. My verse is particularly about a man that I met when I was in a jail. I did a special project where I went into a jail for 10 days and I wrote music with inmates. I documented it. I released a
Wow.
documentary called 16 Bars. While I was in that jail, there was a particular man named Teddy who unfortunately was addicted um, to drugs and was finding it very hard to stay sober, and he was finding it very hard to navigate his life as a grown man. So my verse is dedicated to Teddy, who is an
Mm.
amazing MC, one of the most talented. Like, people that know Teddy would say he's like the modern day Tupac, but he's trapped in
Wow.
various toxic cycles in his life, and they're extremely hard to overcome. And I relate to that, and but it's talking about I want you to
Yeah.
make it. Yeah,
I love how you really seem to see the soul of people, right? You obviously, and this is so apparent. I mean, you did the track, Mr. No, what was it called again? Mr. Wendell, right?
Mr. Wendell.
Was
Yeah,
that
Mr. Wendell.
was that the name of the track, Mr. Wendell?
Yep.
Sorry. And then even the way you're talking about this man, this inmate, it's like you obviously, you're not just looking at people, oh, they're at high status, so I therefore want to be with
Right.
them or learn from them. It's like, no, you seem to really go out your way to want to learn from everybody, all levels of society and all different statuses. I really appreciate that about you.
Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. That is definitely my spirit. That's who I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that comes back in your music. I don't think there's enough people saying stuff like that. But it's funny how in that same track you're actually there might have been the other guy that said, who said you're too lyrical to make it on TikTok.
That was the other guy, King Crooked. Yeah, yeah. And that's very real.
Right.
Like that's very real. Yeah.
Wow.
Because TikTok, is such a
Hmm.
it's really primarily for another generation. And I think musically at least, lyrics don't really do well on that platform. It's more of a different type of thing. So
Oh, I love words. I
me
love the
too.
lyrics. I'm
Me
obsessed with
too.
lyrics. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
me
such a
too.
shame. I want to play another quote for you. Let me see if I can find it. This one.
This is from '94. He says marriage is certain, but not soon. He's hoping for a son. I want to be a best friend to my child, he says. I want to be able to relate to my kid so that he or she knows they could come to me. At the same time, I want to instill discipline. I want to instill African culture in my child.
Oh my
So,
gosh, you are
and then of
just
course you
freaking
did
me
become.
out.
Do you? Isn't that funny?
Oh, it's amazingly funny to hear these things from the young me. That's so crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Oh, like time travel. Time travel.
Yeah,
There's the
it's like
young
time
you talking
travel.
about something that
Yeah,
later happened.
it
You
did.
got
It
married. You
did.
had two children,
Got
right?
married. Two kids, a boy
A boy
first,
and a
actually.
girl.
A boy and now a girl too. Yeah, well, my son is 27, my daughter is 24, so they're adults, but yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. And it's funny, like listening
So
back
how
to that,
has
I think those things I did do, like all of them. Um, my son and I are great friends. He does come to me and his mother, in his hardest times, and he does trust us. And I did instill,
hmm
um, me and his mom did instill, dignity and a certain number, understanding the importance of our culture and our people, understanding the importance of African contributions to the world and African American contributions, and these types of things we felt was extremely important, and we did do that. So it's amazing. It's like a mind, just it's just crazy. Yeah,
And did you so I guess your children were born after the craziness of Arrested Development, when you guys were
yeah.
right, like, when all the madness was going on. So this was afterwards. So were you happy that your children were born after that? Because for me personally, my children were born when I moved to Belize, away from showbiz, away from all that
Uh-huh.
kind of stuff. And I really liked that, because I saw so many celebrities who have to parade their kids, in Hello magazine,
Yeah,
in the nursery when the baby is born, and then that they're kind of sharing
yeah,
their whole private family life with the world, and I never would have wanted to do
yeah.
that. So how did you feel? Because you obviously, your kids also quite came a little bit later. Were you happy about that?
Very much so. Yeah, I'm glad that it
Yeah.
happened after all of that. But they got to reap a lot of the benefits, and probably the best part of the benefits. So like they didn't they weren't born during the most confusing time that I was just describing to you, where it's like all of this stuff's going on, it's topsy turvy. Excuse me. They were born after that, but got to reap the benefits of being able to travel with me. So like me and my queen, um, in order to maintain our marriage, I decided to teach her road management. So she wasn't in the music industry at all. I taught her how to be a road manager and to be, around me. And at that time, I was struggling with infidelity. So, I wanted to be a, a great husband and a great friend and a man that stuck to what I promised to her. And so I said, well, if you're with me, it will
Mm.
help change my whole culture of what I'm used to and when I'm on the road. So early on, I did teach her that. She came on the road with me when we had children. Soon after, they would start coming on the road here and there. And it was great because they got a chance to see their mom and dad in a natural environment, but it wasn't the crazy stuff of the early 90s. And yet we were touring all
Hmm.
over the place. I mean, we were in South Africa, Europe,
Wow.
Canada, America. So they got to see the world too, Asia, and it was great. It had a lot of positives.
And the track Never Had Your Back, which I
Yeah.
love, by the way.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
that's dedicated to your kids, or specifically your
Yes.
daughter, or
My daughter,
yeah.
in particular. Of course, it's dedicated to women, Black women in particular, but my daughter even more particularly because, she's growing up in an era that she doesn't remember. Well, I taught her these things, but in general, there's no recollection of the times in hip hop where there was such diverse content. Hip hop unfortunately has gotten less and less diverse in its content. So pretty much almost every song that comes out in hip hop is about either drugs, violence, um, misogyny, or materialism. And I literally mean
Right.
that. So be four topics. And so she was raised on that, just not by us, but by nature of just being a human being in America. So throughout her youth, we were constantly having to sort of repivot her to have understanding of how valuable she was. Because if you looked at the music videos and
Right.
things that were extremely popular, the women weren't valuable at all. I mean, it was a one man to every 20, 30 women. The women were only known for their bodies and weren't known for their minds or contribution to anything other than sex. And the men were blatant about, I'm not here to have sex, I'm not here to make love. I'm here for sex, I should say, and not here to make love. There's nothing
Right.
to this. You're frivolous. There's one of me and 1,000 of you. These are rap lyrics that I'm quoting, but it's like this is
Hmm.
this is the atmosphere that any daughter, but my daughter in particular, was this is what she's digesting just by being alive and listening to music. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
felt the need to write
Yeah.
something different. Yeah.
What did she think when she heard it?
It's funny. Like, I don't even know. She has literally never told me what she feels about that record. And my daughter, by
Funny.
nature, she
Um,
loves to come to our shows, but she's not an Arrested Development fan in any real way. Like, she doesn't really listen to us, and she doesn't, but she loves the live experience. And I think she does. Like, her and my son love coming to our shows,
yeah.
but it's not because they're necessarily fans. I think
Yeah.
it's just, dad's doing a show, let's go, and it's just they like being out and having a fun time. But yeah, it's funny how that works.
How how can you possibly be how can you possibly be a fan of your parents' work? It just does that
Exactly.
wouldn't quite work, would it?
Yeah,
But I'm
yeah.
sure they're incredibly proud. There was a
They
few
are.
things actually. Some past things. There are a few past things that happened way back that I still wanted to ask you about. Um,
Sure.
is it true that when you guys so when you did the track Tennessee, you sampled Prince? Is it true that Prince did sue you, but he sued you in kind of like almost like quite a cool way, where he just said, okay, just give me a flat fee for using the sample, but I won't take any of the writing credits,
He
publishing. Is that
did.
true?
That's very true. He didn't sue though. He just simply had his office
Mm,
call mine, and he said it was the day that our record went from number 3 on the pop charts to number 4, and it was going down. And we got a call, and he basically said, "You're using my sample," and instead of me owning the song, instead of me, suing and getting lawyers involved, I won $100,000, and it was the word Tennessee. That's what I sampled, and we paid it.
yeah.
And he didn't own the song. He didn't take it off the shelf. I'm not gonna say though at that time that I didn't feel slighted. I was like $100,000 for a word.
Right.
I didn't get it back then. I thought it was like so
Right.
ridiculous. And but the song by then even had made
Hmm.
millions of dollars. And so later I got
Right.
it. And when I met Prince in person, I
Yeah.
totally got it by then. And I'm a huge Prince fan regardless. The whole time I was a Prince fan. So yeah. Prince wasn't
Yeah.
big on sampling.
Um,
You know, it took him quite a while to embrace sampling and to embrace hip hop. I think Chuck D had a lot to do with Prince finally embracing hip hop.
um, another thing. So there was another lawsuit. This was about the TV show Arrested Development, because you had already trademarked the name back then,
Yeah,
and then the TV show came out, and you dropped the case. So there was some kind of something that got settled out of court. In
yeah.
hindsight, do you regret that you didn't fight that harder
Well,
or
it was an
not?
interesting situation. Very interesting because I found out about that TV show the night it was premiering. So it was already out. I found out about it by watching the Super Bowl on Fox, the network Fox. And the after the Super Bowl, they were going to premiere this TV show called Arrested Development. So I'm watching the Super Bowl, and me and my wife and our friends, we're all watching it, and we're like, "What? They're doing something about us after this show? That's really cool. That's crazy. I don't know anything about it though." And the sports commentators on the Super Bowl were talking about us, the group, and they were saying, "So is this the what is this? Is this about the group Arrested Development, Tennessee, people every day?" And they were saying, "Yeah, I guess so. I don't know what it is." And so they didn't know what it was either. And that totally made our case. So when we did take them to court for taking the name, the whole point of a trademark is not to confuse the marketplace on what this product is and
Right.
who, what it is. So it was very clear, especially in the beginnings, that the TV show was totally stepping on already existing trademark and a very publicly known brand. So um, we did go
Yeah.
to court and we did fight them. We decided to settle out of court primarily because the show was they already taped a number of episodes. It was already about
Right.
well, it was aired that night. By the time we were in court, it already had aired a number of episodes, some of which had mentioned us and so on and so forth. So we just decided to move forward. I will say, do I regret not fighting harder? Um, Maybe I do. I do regret it because what happens with TV
Yeah.
shows that take artists or band names is the TV shows always trump it. I mean, Survivor is a TV show it's a
Yeah.
phenom, and there was a band named Survivor. Living Color is a TV show. There's a band named Living
Right.
Color. These TV
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
always trump the artist, and so if I would have if I would have fought harder, I probably could have stopped it from existing in the first place. So
Yeah, because nowadays, if you Google Arrested
yes,
Development, it's the
yes, I've
TV
done it.
show. You have to
TV
put
show.
the band. And it's, I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah.
this is an interesting quote. Truth is defined by the top results of Google searches these days, right?
Truth. That is
Isn't it
very
true that
true.
whatever, like, and that's
Yep.
truth or
Yep.
trust. If it's at the
Yeah.
top of Google,
Yep.
that's it,
Uh-huh.
right? And so it's kind of sad in that way that you guys have kind of disappeared. Not disappeared,
Yeah.
but
No, I know what you
yeah,
mean though. It is. It's
taken
buried.
over.
It's buried with all of the television stuff.
Yeah.
I will say at the end of the day, I've been very proud with how well we are faring considering the huge machinery that they have and the little machinery that we have. So I look at it like, and I looked at it when we were in court as a David and Goliath situation. I mean, we were fighting up against Fox. And even though I had more money back in these days when we were in court, there was no way that I was going to be able to beat Fox as a huge network with
Right.
Ron Howard, who was a superstar in his own right and a huge director at the time, still is. But it was just no way that I was going to be able to fight them in court. They had tons of lawyers, an entire corporation
Yeah.
behind them. And so, yeah, we decided to settle because, as you probably know, if we would have kept fighting and lost, we wouldn't have gotten any money. Not to mention,
Right.
we would have paid all these
That's
lawyer
true.
fees into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so we
Yeah.
really had to sort of judge what's the best way to approach this. You know.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So coming back to the thing, so with Prince, you did the sample, and there's a really interesting quote, which is quite a famous quote from you about sampling. So I just want to play that one and get your take on this now.
Quote that I love from Billboard: every time you sample notes, you're also sampling the spirit of whomever you're sampling. Quote
Uh,
that I
So every time you sample, you don't just
Yeah.
take the sound, you also get the spirit and the emotion of the person that you sample.
Totally believe that to this day. Yes, so like,
Yeah.
sampling is unlike playing a note. So if I played a note from a song you wrote today, I'm just playing the note, but I'm not playing the room you were in or the way that you mic'd
Hmm.
your piano. I'm not playing the era that microphones were in and technology was in at that time. I'm not playing that. I'm just playing the particular notes you played on my piano. But when I'm sampling, all of these things go with it, the spirit of that time period. So if I sample something from the 60s, there was an entire thing going on in the 60s. The way they recorded music in the 60s was
Hmm.
thoroughly different. The microphones, the technology they used to record it, the the actual spirit of the artist who's performing it, and the spirit of that record that I'm sampling from, all of these things are wrapped up in that sample, and that's what makes sampling so extremely special to me, is that to me it's a connector point between the past and the present, bringing it
Hmm.
all to the future. And I wish sampling was done more often, because it gave me an appreciation for music as opposed to made me lazy about music. I learned about so many artists, and I learned to deeply appreciate artists like a Joni Mitchell or a James Brown or a Bob James, or whoever, incredible bongo band. I mean, whoever. It's like these artists, I started to learn their entire catalog because I sampled them and I fell in love with what they did. So yeah, I think sampling is a saving grace to music as opposed to a bad thing for music.
Hmm. So when you create music, I mean, is creating music almost like a spiritual practice to you? Do you consciously sit and think I'm gonna create something, or do you get these things just they come to you
Both.
like
And
something in the air?
yeah, both. Because it is a spiritual thing. And as I live life and as I'm moved, even right now, as I'm moved by what I see on the screen for you, right, in Belize, those things give me certain ideas and certain thoughts, and it opens my mind and allows me to travel a little bit to a little window in Belize. Well, then that will change the way I'm going to write a song today. If I was to write something right now, it's going to change it, because it gives me another window into another world that allows me to explore the emotions I'm picking up from what I'm seeing right now. So yeah, it's definitely a spiritual
Mm.
thing. It does come in waves. My wife, being married to a musician, I just have to respect her so much, because I get inspired at any time of the day, and I'll jot down a lyric in the middle of a romantic dinner. I might jot down a lyric that I think is clever or great. So she's learned to just totally accept this, sort of interesting way of going about life with a musician. And yeah, I think it's also it's like a therapy session every time I write a song.
Hmm.
It's like being in therapy with some really ultra great professional. So it's an amazing journey doing music.
Yeah. So, do you ever feel that? Have there ever been songs that you've written where you kind of almost feel like you didn't write them, where it's like, because you know how people go, "Oh, that's mine.
Yeah,
You took those notes from me," and but
yeah, yeah,
sometimes it's like it's almost like it's all floating out there, and creative
yeah.
people can tap into it, and sometimes
Totally
even people tap into whatever is out there at the same time, which that's always blows my mind when people have the
agreed.
same idea or almost the same idea
Yeah,
at the same time in a different part of the world. It's so
totally.
magical, isn't it?
It really is. I think people every day for us was one of those songs that just came together like nothing. And same difference with Tennessee, a song that just came together as if I didn't even write it myself. Like it just flowed so easily,
Mm,
and it just felt so right off the bat. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Let me play another quote for you. Or not really a quote. This was just something that was written about you guys as well.
Rolling Stone magazine, January the 7th, 1993. The members of Arrested Development pray before every meal. They pray before every plane trip. They sprinkle phrases like beautiful, spiritual, and deeply into yourself across conversations like holy water. They don't play concerts, they throw celebrations. They are, in fact, perhaps the only alternative music sensation incessantly talking about Nirvana that might not even know there was a band by that name. I think God has really guided the group in the direction he wanted it to go in, says Speech.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So is that accurate?
I think that was. I think that was very accurate. Like, um, you know, I couldn't. Yeah, I think before every meal, I do. I think like we were definitely a praying band. I don't think though that we were very religious. Like during that time period, I wasn't
No.
practicing any particular religion, and I believed in God. I do believe that God guided us, and especially knowing the history of how our first single came about with my grandmother passing, and she's from Tennessee, and then my brother passing that same week. And the last place I saw both of them was in Tennessee. And then I wrote the song, and
Mm-hmm.
Bob OJ
Yeah.
being a friend of mine, and I found out he was in my mom and dad's wedding as the best man. Like these types of things were just you could tell that somebody was arranging things beyond what my understanding was as a leader of the group. And that's why I felt like,
Yeah.
you know, we were being guided. The journey was so weird and so surreal that it definitely wasn't just us pulling strings.
But you said you weren't necessarily religious, because I always I mean, I wonder, like, would your image of God be like, this white dude with a long beard sitting on a cloud telling us what we can and can't do? And because to me, I
Right.
can't relate to that. I can relate to
Sure.
God, but I cannot relate
Yeah.
to this jealous, angry white man sitting on a cloud. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I mean, is that the
We
God of your
totally agree.
understanding? I guess not, right?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, never has been. To be honest,
No, no,
never has been. The whole white man in the chair, or somewhere up in heaven, never related to me. It never felt right to me. And
no,
even the white Jesus, the blue eyes, blonde haired Jesus,
no.
quiet as a lamb, never appealed to me. And then when I started reading scriptures, it became obvious that none of that is true. I mean, the scriptures make that very clear. So, um, yeah, so no, it never was that. When I formed a relationship with God in a non-religious way when I was a kid, my mom and dad worked a lot. And so my brother was 7 years older than me. So he was always in a different chapter in his life. So me and him never got to hang a lot because, if I was 10, he was 17 and he was dating girls and I'm just liking, hot rod cars, playing with little toy trucks. So we were always in different stages in life. So I was alone a lot. My mom and dad worked tons and were out and about. And so I was by myself a lot. And in my school that I used to go to, I used to walk about a mile to school and a mile back by myself. And this is at age 7, 8, 9, 10. So I would pray to God a lot for safety and to hope that nobody
Mm,
stole me or nobody, harmed me in any way. And every time that I was successful in going to and from, I would thank God. And so this idea of God looking out for me was something that I particularly formed early on, but it had nothing to do with at
right,
the time going to church or believing in this particular religion or that particular. It just was a relationship that I had, and
right.
so yeah, it was very personal.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got the same thing. I mean, to me, it's like, you know, people have just come up with this personification of God, but the personification is not a personification that everyone can relate to. I mean, for me,
Right
to me, if I can imagine a God, it would be a woman. If we look about
there, you go.
creating
Yeah,
life and caring and
sure.
loving, to
Yeah,
me, that's more
yeah,
a woman than a man. So the whole
yeah.
patriarchy is really the thing that puts me off, and
Sure.
it's kind of a shame. But yeah, so
Yeah,
I think we're a lot more on those same lines, where it's something you can gain strength out of it, but not necessarily
yeah.
part of an organized religion. on your album, For the Effin' Love, you
Yeah.
released, you have a track called Be Refreshed. And that kind of
Yeah.
echoes the sentiment again of Aching for Acres, right? Which was a track on
Very much.
how was the album called again?
Zinga Yeah, Zinga.
Right. So on both those tracks, you were talking about owning land and wanting to
Hmm.
farm and all this stuff. And this is what you ended
Yes,
up doing, right?
very much so.
Tell me
Yeah,
about your
I
farming.
live. Sure. So I don't farm, but I do live on 11 acres of land, and we have planted at certain times. Our schedule doesn't allow us to do it as much as we would want because we tour and then we're gone and so on and so forth. We don't have like a big staff or anything in our home to help us do things. So, but owning land, owning property, working with nature is something that I deeply, deeply believe in and have been doing for the last, I guess, 26 years, 27 years. So, yeah, it's been amazing. Um, the song Acre for Acres is talking about owning land and having property um, because, at the time, hip hop was glorifying getting the next Jeep or the car or, a gold chain or whatever. And my sentiment was no, get some land because there's a finite amount of land in the world and there's an infinite amount of material things that you can get. They come and they go.
Yeah.
But get some land and it's a way to have more power in your community. It's a way to be able to self-sustain and grow things and you
Hmm.
could be quote unquote poor monetarily, but if you have land in a place to grow things, you're not as poor as you think because you're rich with resources and things that you can grow and share with your community. And that's what Be Refreshed is about. It's almost
Yeah.
like a communal, you know, I refresh you, you refresh me, and we work together and we grow wealth together by sharing things. And wealth doesn't necessarily have to mean just money either. It can be the things that you would buy with your money, so foods and so on and so forth. So
I love it. So, and then finally, um, mankind, Homo sapiens, we've been making music like from the
yeah,
beginning of time. Like some of the oldest artifacts that have been found, human artifacts, have all been musical instruments. Everywhere in the
yeah,
world, through all time, people have made music. But it was interesting how, really, in tribal communities, there really wasn't a difference between those who created the music and those who listened to the music. Everybody was creating together. It was a communal thing. Everybody made
hmm,
music. And it's really now in
yeah,
our society where you've got the ones who make the music and the ones who listen. But then I'm wondering if there's still part of our kind of like almost DNA where we still crave that thing of creating music together, and if that's really what's so uplifting when you're in a concert and everybody sings together, they chant together,
yeah,
they dance together, and you can
yeah.
feel that magic. But do you think that's kind of just part of our, I don't know, evolutionary kind of DNA that's still in us?
I do. I really do. In fact, I'm writing a song right now, and that song is talking about what you just described. Like there is there is a certain bond and a certain connection that we all feel when we're all involved in this creative process and we're all not just watching it and spectating it from afar but being a part of it and it's a powerful thing. That's what I love about concerts. I often say that to me it's like making love
Hmm.
because it is literally intimate. It feels intimate. It does not
Hmm.
feel like a business transaction a lot of times, most of the time even. It feels like an intimate moment between people and it's profound. Yeah, it's great.
And people have been craving it, right? After this whole COVID period where that hasn't
Yeah,
been part of our lives. I think everybody is just, they just want to get back out there and sing together and dance together and
facts.
commune in that way. Yeah.
Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
do
seen
find
it.
it
We
interesting. I find it interesting as I find it interesting as well how, apparently, without even realizing it, in a way, we always are creating music together because there's always a rhythm that's going on, right? Everybody has a rhythm. So, someone from a village from the countryside will have a slower rhythm. Someone from a big city has a faster rhythm, which is why when they meet,
Hmm.
quite often it's kind of hard until they finally meet somewhere in the middle. And they say that even
Yeah.
when there's a family or people eating around a table, that things happen at a certain beat. Not that everyone eats at the same time,
Right.
but people
Sure.
stretch their syllables at the same time as picking up the knife and the fork and the chewing, and even pitch. If men
Right.
and women talk in a group, there's usually about a
Facts.
full octave between the woman and the men, and then the
Wow.
children go another octave higher. So in a way, we kind of always are creating music together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's brilliant. I love that. I agree with all of that. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Music. It's the best thing, isn't it?
It is. It's
What a
powerful too.
blessed
It's just
life
so
to be
powerful.
able to yeah, and to spend your
Yes.
whole life doing this
Yeah.
amazing thing.
Yeah. Agreed. You have no arguments here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Thank you for all your wonderful music. Thank you for your beautiful lyrics. Thank you for your insight. It's
Thank
been an
you. Yeah.
absolute joy listening to you way back when and still today. Never stop.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this interview. It was fun. You did a great job.
Oh, thank you so much, Speets. Thank you. Wonderful.